Since the first bus of 75 migrants arrived at Union Station 1 year ago, more than 13,500 people have made their way to Chicago, straining the city's social safety net and at times exacerbating tensions between Chicago's Black and Latino communities. For a city already struggling to provide resources to its most underserved communities, the unplanned influx of migrant asylum seekers has resulted in a perfect storm of crisis for the city. Who is or should be responsible for the health care, housing, employment, and education for Chicago's newest residents? How do we reconcile the unease of historically underserved communities wanting to be supportive of the asylum seekers while they watch limited resources be shifted to support the new arrivals to the city of big shoulders? Tonight we unpack an issue that has and will continue to impact each of us for the foreseeable future. I'm Andrea Zopp. This is Chicago Newsroom 2.0, and we'll get into it. But first, I'll be joined by the president of NABET Local 41 to discuss the rash of attacks on journalists.
I'm Jamira Alexander, inviting you to join me for The Public Narrative, A Word, with my very special guests, David Peterson of the A. Philip Randolph Pullman Porter Museum and Melvin Thompson of Resolute Consulting Group. Join the conversation Thursday, September 21st at 7 p.m. on CAN-TV Cable Channel 19 and streaming on cantv.org and CAN-TV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
Television news crews across the country have faced increasing threats of violence while on the job in recent years. In August 2015, reporter Allison Parker and photojournalist Adam Ward of CBS affiliate WDBJ in Roanoke were shot and killed while conducting a live TV interview. In 2021, crews in Raleigh, San Francisco, and Miami Beach came under attack as they were trying to do their jobs. Unfortunately, Chicago journalists have not been immune from this disturbing trend. In as many weeks, 2 local news crews have been victim of crime on the job. On August 8th, a photographer with WLS-TV was assaulted and robbed while covering a news conference on Chicago's West Side. And on August 28th, 2 employees of Spanish-language TV station Univision Chicago were held at gunpoint. Joining me to discuss this disturbing trend is the president of NABET Local 41, Raza Siddiqui. Welcome to the newsroom, Raza. Thanks for being here.
Andy, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come join you and give a voice to people who are professional observers, often behind the camera, who, present a story but very seldom have the opportunity to talk about their own. And I, as their union president, am happy to come and give a voice to their working conditions and make it a priority and a purpose of advocacy to make sure that our members and the people who bring us news are safe.
I'm happy to do it, and I'm happy to have you there. It's really important. Part of the job of reporters is to tell the story, but not to be part of the story. But that doesn't mean they don't have a story that's particularly changing. First, let's just level set for the audience. Tell us, what does NABET stand for, and who does the union represent? Who are your members?
Absolutely. So NABET is the National Association of Broadcast Employees and Technicians. We represent pretty much everyone in television who's not in front of the camera. If you see reporters, they're oftentimes AFTRA. They belong to that union. The people who bring the picture, the videographers, the people who set up news trucks, who take in live feeds, which is called transmission, studio operations, editors, directors, technical directors. These are all the people who our union represents. These are all the people who collaborate to tell a story. And although sometimes only one person or two, you'll see the anchor person, you'll see the reporter get the credit, it really is a collaborative effort. And all these people perform that public service that is television news.
Right. Well, I'm glad you're here just to share those facts, because I think we forget, those of us who are consumers of news, how many people there are that make it happen, that the people sitting in the chair on the camera are important. They have to understand and help write the stories, but it's really, there's no news shows, there's no program without all the people that you just talked about. So thank you for that. So let's talk a little bit about this disturbing trend. You were recently quoted in a Washington Post story on this topic, is that right?
I actually noticed that after the fact, but I was told that I was, and I wished, I was quoted for something that was a better story, but unfortunately it was to again advocate for the working conditions of our people, because as you had stated, 2 attacks in the last month. I'm saddened to say that that's actually gone to a 3rd attack. September 6th, we learned that another Univision reporter who, while live streaming, more and more people will live stream as an introduction before they go on air.
Right.
While she was doing that, she herself was attacked. So this was something that CWB picked up and shared the story of. So it's something that we're monitoring. And we're really trying to get a handle on how we can work with our journalists. We've reached out to management at television stations. It's really incumbent on them, as it is, to get a good story, to make sure that our journalists are safe and that they're protected. And we're kind of holding their feet to the fire on that. We're also talking with Chicago police. We're trying to get a town hall meeting so basically we can develop better protocols and work together to make sure our journalists can actively but safely cover the stories that serve as public interest.
Why do you think this is starting to happen now? And I think the other thing I think maybe you could talk about a little bit is one of the reasons I think it's, for me, as someone who's dealt with reporters for a long time, is it's particularly disturbing because in a lot of these stories, the reporters go out, they just go, right? They're, to your point, they're out there, they're live streaming, they're about something, a press conference is gonna happen, but they don't have necessarily a lot of support. So let's talk a little bit first about why you think this might be happening, and also why it's of particular, besides the fact that people are being put in danger, but why else, because of the working conditions, it might be a particular concern to your members.
I noticed an uptick, and I think that's directly relevant to the fact that there was a time when I think news media was considered off limits, right? When you went into the community understood these people are trying to tell our story. They're trying to share something about what's happening here. More and more, I believe that we're not viewed as off limits anymore. They see an opportunity. And sometimes, I hate to say it, but the trend is less people doing more work. You've heard of MMJs, multimedia journalists, which are reporters and photographers. It's one person doing both jobs. Now, when you're looking into a camera, either this way, right, or the camera's looking at you, either way you're looking at it with tunnel vision, you are no longer situationally aware of what's going on, and that provides a perfect opportunity for someone to take advantage and victimize this person. So one of the things that we're advocating is that security, armed security, go out with news crews. Like you said, oftentimes they show up, to work and they don't know where they're going to be sent. And it's incumbent that their safety is treated as a priority, and they are armed with the resources to make sure that they're safe. Of these 3 attacks, the one that happened on August 8th, the WLS one you talked about, happened in the middle of the day, broad daylight. The one in Univision, the first one, happened, if I remember correctly, that was a morning-side crew. It was as they were preparing for 5 a.m. The most recent one was a night side. So what we're learning is there's no time that this will happen. It can happen anytime. So what we need to do is be prepared to handle this at any time.
Right. Well, it is. Do you think, there's a lot of increasing, what's the word I want, talk, sometimes from politicians, elected officials, demonizing the media or talking down to the media. Do you think that has any impact? Is that part of what's happening, or do you think this is more part of the broader issue of crime that we're facing in Chicago, but also other cities across the country?
I would say that it's crime. Yeah. It's the fact that we're going into the community, and like I said, there's no longer the culture of viewing media as observers who are telling a story, but viewing them as potential targets. That has really added to this circumstance. But whatever it is, we want to take the opportunity. That's my take. We want to take the opportunity and talk to all of our members. We have quite a few members. 800 at all in our local. We represent multiple stations in the city of Chicago. Along with CAN TV, we represent Fox, ABC, Univision, Telemundo, Univision. So it's imperative that we collaborate, that we bring all of our members, along with members at the other stations we don't cover, CBS, WGN. I've been in talks with IBW's president who covers those stations and AFTRA to try to have a big town hall where we can all discuss our safety issues and all of our ideas as to what we can do to make sure that we're safer.
Right. Well, I think really, really important because one of the things we talk about a lot here at CAN TV is the importance of journalism, of telling stories, of telling them, being able to tell them safely and honestly. And we don't want people who are doing that work to be afraid to go to work. So there are some parallels, I think, to what's been happening with the postal workers too. Also
Absolutely.
used to be kind of off limits, right? And now targeting, and there I think again it's, as you said, it's opportunity. And so I think we need to remind people. What would you like my listeners to take away from this story as they're thinking about this topic?
So there's multiple agencies that have worked to help journalists. One such one is the Committee to Protect Journalists. And quite frankly, they've operated overseas. They've helped journalists in war environments and stuff. But I've reached out to them and we're actually collaborating because the situation is such that we want to provide training with whatever resources we can. So we're opening our lines of communication with Chicago Police, with the Committee to Protect Journalists. We're working with other unions collaboratively to make sure that the voice of those who stand behind the scenes to bring a story are not lost in the advocacy of their own working conditions. So we want to keep our people safe. There's organizations and committees that are going to help us with that, and we're committed to making sure that through these discussions and actions that the people who bring you the news that inform the public are able to do so safely.
Wow. Thank you, Raza, so much for being here to talk about this really important topic.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it. Thank you, and we'll be right back on the other side of the break, where I'll be joined by 3 journalists who have been closely following the still developing story of the influx of immigrants to Chicago. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Connie Lindsay.
And I'm Anna Valencia.
Join us on Joy in the Breakthrough, a podcast where we'll be talking to a wide range of leaders from different generations and backgrounds who have found power in being broken open.
Tune in every week on CAN TV Channel 19, streaming on cantv.org, and on the new CAN TV Plus app.
During a joint press conference on August 30th, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson joined Governor J.B. Pritzker and reiterated a call for the federal government to expedite work permits for asylum seekers in Chicago, adding urgency to this message by emphasizing the city would be unable to support ongoing additions to a migrant population that already totals more than 13,500 if changes aren't made. The start of the school year finds the children of asylum seekers entering CPS schools ill-equipped to provide enough Spanish-speaking instructors, and housing continues to be a wildly uncertain game of musical chairs. Joining me to share their well-informed perspectives are Hugo Balta, the host of 3 Questions With, and community activist Sara Sadat. Welcome. Nice to have both of you here to talk about this really important topic and issue that's going to be with us for a while. So, as I said, you're both well informed, you both have perspective and views and have been engaged on these matters. Tell me, what are the things that concern you the most right now? Hugo, I'll start on the migrant crisis.
For me, it's about the people that are being lost. Not only the migrants, because we always talk about statistics and the numbers, and it's very important, but these are men and women, families, children, as you've mentioned, and the human aspect is lost. Another group of people that's being lost are the members of the communities that are being asked to host these migrants that are, I think, rightfully so, demanding that the government, who historically has not providing them the resources for them to lift themselves up, whether it's education, whether it's jobs. They're saying, what about us? And why are you providing resources for them and not us? And I think those are the people that are being lost in this crisis, and they need to continuously surface at the top. They're being spoken about, but not spoken to.
Sara?
Like you said, it's about the people, right, Hugo? It's about the dignity, the respect. I had a chance, you could talk about numbers, you can talk about policy, you can talk about jobs. I actually had a chance to talk with my broken Spanish, high school Spanish, to Gabriel, who was a construction worker. He was from Venezuela. He left 2 of his kids in Venezuela, came here with his 6-year-old daughter and his wife. School just started. He was on his phone. He was waiting to build up his construction job. He used to build pools back in Venezuela. Obviously, with the deteriorating economy and the crisis, he doesn't have that ability to do that anymore. So where is that dignity and respect, right? And then on the flip side, we have known about this since December of 2019. So just because we have our poor, our huddled masses, right, yearning to breathe the fire, I'm thinking about all of the great things that United States represents. Why have we not put together a plan? Why have we not learned from our mistakes in the past to put to work people that actually want to work here?
What are we missing in terms of immigration policy that would help, help move asylum seekers through the system better, help us deal with undocumented immigrants who are already here? Are there any thoughts there? I mean, it's a big question. Hugo's like, why are you asking me this question?
No. Look, I think what's lacking, or how do we get our elected officials to affect positive change? Right. We vote. We become civically involved. We use our power and our right at the ballot box. And the immigration is a necessity. This country needs immigrants. In fact, the Latino Policy Forum earlier this year last year I should say, in collaboration with a coalition of other groups, had authored a study that demonstrated that if not for immigrants, the population growth of the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, would have decreased. When it comes to workforce and filling those jobs, those essential jobs, if not for the immigrants, there would have been even greater shortages. So immigrants are a necessity for the growth of our local, state, and national economy. And one of the reasons why this hasn't been figured out in the last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, it's because it's become a political punching bag. It is not in the best interest not to have a boogeyman, someone to blame the ills of this country. And so you instead of really coming and finding common ground to allow a pathway for the millions of undocumented immigrants that are in the United States and are part of the fabric of our economy, our society, it is easier to use them because they're nameless, they're faceless. And again, they're spoken about but not spoken to, or given an opportunity to voice their opinions because they don't have that power that we have to enact our vote. In order for us to really affect change, we've got to really show up in a big way and vote elected officials that are much more concerned about beating the drum on what is the essence of their party, as opposed to what's in the best interest of not only the migrant community, but the community as a whole.
Right. And, so you made. I'm going to come right to you, but just want to touch on that really important point you made about we need immigrants, right? As a country, our economy needs them. And there's a large, for example, business group of a business organization who's been pushing for a while, a long time, for better immigration policy reform, because they recognize as business leaders we need immigrants, but that's not how it's positioned. It's always positioned, often, not always, but often positioned as us versus them. I'm sorry, Sara, you were going to have a comment.
No, I was actually just going to agree with majority of this collaboration and partnership, right, with everybody all across the board. We can vote for the right people into the right position, but can we actually effectively make that change happen? What is the goal that our politicians are looking for? And if it's leading with your heart, with the people forefront in mind, our immigration policy should just be, if they're here, let's give them the basic needs that they need. We need education, we need housing, and ultimately we need to fast track employment. And that could be done at a national level, not just at a local level. There are so many jobs that are just waiting for individuals to work on. And with the hungry, like literally hungry people that we have on the streets, why not make that a little bit quicker to happen?
Right.
That's the immediate thing that we can even do.
Where do we get the resources? How do we better align our resources and think about the resources that we do have, and how can we combat this us versus them, right? Well, you're not giving us resources, you're giving them to the new arrivals. Well, it's a little less like that, but what are some ideas on how we can address this and find more resources to address some of the issues that you've been talking about? Sara, Hugo, any thoughts?
The first thing that comes to mind is at the height of the pandemic, former Mayor Lightfoot was approaching the pandemic, especially with marginalized communities, and of course Latinos were the ones that were affected the most. And the biggest miss in the beginning from that administration was not leveraging organizations that are embedded in different communities that really know what each of these different neighborhoods, these different groups need. Once they got involved, then when it came to rolling out immunizations and vaccines and making it in a way that was equitable, it started to work because these organizations, an extension of the community, know the members of that community and they know what they need. This crisis needs that same type of approach. Mayor Brandon Johnson, Governor Pritzker, the federal government needs to draw from that well of these organizations, community organizations that historically have been better serving these communities than sometimes government does, in order to draw from that well about possible solutions. And then the last thing I would say, it's about being transparent. One of the things that I absolutely think Brandon Johnson is doing well is being transparent about his ideas, his administration's ideas, and asking for help. Not everybody is going to agree with some of those ideas, like building tent cities as they've been called, but at least he's talking about it and creating a platform for aldermen, the city council, as well as the community to voice their opinion one way or the other.
Sara, I see you nodding. Are you nodding in agreement?
I'm nodding in agreement. I mean, the only thing that I would like to add to that is the border doesn't end at Chicago. We are Illinois-wide, right? Why do we need to stop with one mayor and just the aldermans there? Why not pull in the resources that we have with our surrounding communities to make sure that we have a place? We have excellent schools. We have amazing hospitals. We have enough mental health staff to address some of the needs of our migrants right now. Right outside of Chicago, maybe on the borderline of Chicagoland, right? Why not bring that in? We did that really well during the pandemic, and previous Mayor Lori Lightfoot, she actually brought a council of Chicago mayors and Illinois mayors together to disseminate the vaccinations. I think this is pretty much a mass scale rollout like that, right? So why not bring in all the resources from our surrounding communities? Everybody wants to help.
Right. I think part of that is this idea that it's still this us versus them.
Yeah.
So with the pandemic, everybody was affected, right? Everybody had the risk of getting sick. Almost everybody knew somebody who had COVID. Many people lost people. So it was much easier to bring people together. Now it's so much easier for downstate cities to say, downstate places to say, well, that's a Chicago problem. That's not a downstate problem. And I think really getting back to that point, and I don't know how we do it, the point of we need an immigrant community. And the point that both of you made early on, these are human beings. These are people who came to this country like everybody's ancestors, right? Came to this country to try and find a better life. And they are humans, and we should treat humans the way we want to be treated. And so, but I think we forget that, and I think that gets in the way of this challenge. So I think one of the things we need to think about is how do we see this as a national, it's not a Chicago issue, Sara, as you said, it's not a Illinois or Texas issue, it's a national issue about how we're going to treat people when they come to our country seeking support, and how do we fund that in a way that also faces equity for people who need that. Let's talk, we have a few minutes left, let's talk about some of the ideas that, some of the things that the city has done well. Are there things that you think the city has done so far done well? And, or are there things really that you think we really need to get to quickly? One is, I think, housing, and the mayor is obviously proposing the tent city, which people don't like, but to me, may not be the long-term solution, but it feels better than what I see when I drive by police stations and see the migrant community, people having to sit outside, play with their kids, or that story the other day about that poor woman, who was so frustrated about not having access, being forced. Anybody who's ever been in a porta potty, right? Were we not feeling her? Sara? I'm sorry, I'm doing all the talking.
All the time, yeah. No, it's the temporary short-term housing, maybe an opportunity that we can definitely address on. But Chicago historically has done great at longer term housing options and availability. It's actually getting individuals into those places and making sure that they're becoming part of the program, and we're supporting them with education, with mental health infrastructure, as well as making sure that there is employment happening, right, with the longer term housing. Chicago has done a great job, and I'm not just going to attribute, Mayor Johnson on this, historically all the way previous to Mayor Daley. But what we right now need is that temporary short-term turnaround. So I know once we get through this next, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I want to say the next couple of months, the longer-term strategy, I have complete faith in that Chicago will carry it forward.
Well, I believe in Chicago as well, and we could talk about this topic for another half an hour, but we are out of time. So I want to thank you both for being here, for sharing your perspectives on this really important issue that, as we know, is going to be with us for some time, and we have to come together to address. I'll be right back with my closing thoughts. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Felicia Davis Blakely, guest hosting for Darius Hillman. Joining me on the next edition in the arena, Cook County Commissioner Josina Morita.
I represent a district with 100 languages spoken. Until we can have full inclusion, we can't have full equity.
Join the conversation Tuesday at 7 p.m. on CAN TV Cable 19 and streaming on cantv.org and the CAN TV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
1 year ago, life for a group of asylum seekers was forever changed as they stepped off buses in Chicago. 1 year ago, life for Chicagoans was forever changed as we grappled with the dual reality that was a genuine desire to support our newly arrived brothers and sisters, and a deeply rooted frustration that limited resources needed by residents in the city's most underserved communities are now needed to support the new arrivals. Humans used in a sickening game of political warfare sleep outside police stations as the city and state implore the federal government to send additional support. While there are no easy or fully satisfying answers for either long-term Chicagoans or our newest residents, human lives stand in the balance. So as imperfect or painful or seemingly unfair as this may all feel for so many longtime residents, we must find a way to stand in the gap for each other, new and old. This is us now. This is Chicago. Thank you for joining the conversation tonight. We'll be back again next week with another edition of Chicago Newsroom 2.0. Until then, be well and well informed.